Hello. Hi.
Paul, Bridging Two Worlds. Paul was 26 when he introduced himself to me at a UFO conference in New Hampshire. A sensitive, handsome young man, he is one of an increasing group of abductees that I have been encountering who have discovered that they have an apparent dual identity as an alien. They do not use that word, and a human being. From the beginning of our work, Paul believed that he had a mission to be an example of love and openness, and to enable humans to overcome the fears that constrict us and prevent us from using the gifts we possess. The purpose of our work together has been to enable Paul to discover the depths of his complex identity and to take full responsibility for his transformative and healing powers. Paul and I have had 2 hypnosis or relaxation sessions after our initial interview, and he has attended 2 support group meetings. When we first met, he was living with his parents and administering his own advertising business. He was working to earn enough money to rent a separate apartment. Paul, like many abductees I have seen, came to me after a disturbing series of meetings with a mental health professional who he continued to see until a few days before I met with him. He first consulted Ms. T, a psychologist, to explore weird experiences that had led him to question his sanity, including one 5 hours after smoking marijuana, in which he saw some type of being on the stairs at home. He wished also to see if his experiences were related to difficulties growing up. He met with Ms. T somewhat irregularly over a 1.5 year period. The therapy included 4 or 5 relaxation sessions intended to recapture memories of possible sexual abuse by his paternal grandmother, which did not in fact emerge. What did come to the surface were additional encounters with unusual beings, going back to when Paul was age 3, that were powerfully real for him and had a shattering impact on his worldview and everything I've known. As the sessions progressed, Paul found that he was becoming increasingly awakened to a connection to like a foreign alien kind of thing, which Ms. T, perhaps understandably, could not deal with. One time in a session, he asked for a sign of the reality of the beings or the energies associated with them, which was followed by a loud bang near the office door. Ms. T was frightened but willing to explore the noise. Paul was curious to check it out and felt an electric crackle in the room, but found there was nothing visible behind the door. Ms. T was wide-eyed with fear, and Paul had to try to calm her down. He had the sense that something was going to come for Ms. T over the next weekend and told her so. She volunteered no information at the beginning of the following session, so Paul asked her if anything had happened. Ms. T reported that her bed had mysteriously bounced up and down. She revealed that she had been terrified and, according to Paul, tried to ignore what had occurred, except to clean the house out of evil spirits. Her assumption, Paul said, was that anything good or intelligent would greet you in a very comfortable way. Despite Paul's feeling that Ms. T was suppressing him because of how frightening she found the abduction material, a good deal of information came out during the hypnosis sessions with her. He describes, for example, how in an early session he expected to see my grandmother abusing me or something, when all of a sudden, I see the ship and I'm out in the back, the chimney, and there's these little people coming up, and I'm like freaking out. In our first regression, we would explore this episode, which occurred when Paul was age 6.5, in much more detail. In his last session with Ms. T, before he terminated the relationship, Paul recalled an abduction experience that he dated to age 2 or 3. Judging from the fact that he had on a one-piece red pajama suit with buttons up the front that his mother confirmed he was put to bed in at that time. He found himself on a table, and it scared the hell out of me. He remembered then that a being had come into his room, got my hand, communicated that Paul had to just be strong here, and took him through the door. Paul recalled only flashes of a ship and does not remember how he ended up inside. From the table he saw that the surrounding room seemed to be made of some sort of uniform metal alloy and that objects in the room did not seem movable. As he would try to get up, a being would press his head with 2 fingers and push him back down, seemingly effortlessly, and he would be temporarily calmed. I asked Paul if he could see the being. "Not yet. I did in a minute," he replied. The creature was wearing a full bodysuit with what looks like seams. All of a sudden he turned, like a flash. He moved so fast. And I'm looking at his head, and it was like classic. It was like big eyes, and I'm like they were dark, and I'm like, "Okay," whispered. And I just lied back down. He thought, okay, yeah. He doesn't want me to look at him, obviously. Based on many other cases, I asked if perhaps it was he who did not want to look, which Paul thought was heavily possible for me too, as he was very frightened. Then he saw 2 other beings standing behind him and thought, "What's going on? Why won't somebody talk to me here?" Then Paul looked down and saw that he started doing something to my leg, with long fingers. He or she, I don't really know. It looked like 2 fingers with a thumb, and he was just feeling my calf, real lightly going up and down, and then all of a sudden I really felt my leg, my calf. It was pain, and I was like, "Ow, my calf really hurts." Paul does not recall seeing an instrument, but remembers that the leg felt numb and as if the being injected something into it. Paul further described the pain in his leg that he had recalled in the session with Ms. T, how, after that was done, everything started settling back down, and then he started to get me up. And the being was taking me out, when Ms. T said, "All right, our time's up," and I thought, okay. As the session concluded, Paul still felt pain in his leg, and Ms. T asked him, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm okay." You know what I mean? I don't know, I guess so. I can walk. I can drive home or whatever. There was talk about the possibility of a longer session, but the lack of feedback and Paul's feeling that Ms. T had so much difficulty dealing with the impact of the abduction material on herself led him to terminate the therapy. Paul made a last attempt to get help from Ms. T in a phone call a few days before he and I met. He expressed his difficulty in dealing with the material that was coming up, putting it all together. But uncertain herself all along as to what to make of the abduction stories, she seemed to have nothing to say except, in effect, "Call me when you need me." Paul's willingness to stay so long in this largely unproductive therapy relationship was not only related to how few people are qualified to deal with abduction-related issues. It was also connected with how alone and unaccustomed to receiving help he had felt throughout his life, and with his lifelong tendency. Like children of alcoholics, both his parents did have drinking problems, to protect the adults around him from their own distresses. His decision to stop seeing Ms. T was, in effect, also a decision to stop protecting her from the distress that his case was creating for her. Before ending our first session, Paul spoke of feeling foreign. All my life to my mother, I always said I was adopted. I'm not from here. And the difficulty that people like me have to adjust and adapt to what is going on here if we're going to live and survive here. He related this to the negative, hostile emotional climate he encounters in mainstream society and expressed his desire to be an instigator towards the positive and become an example of what someone can do to free communication. The model's there, he said, but this world has pretty much boxed it off. I've got to open that up. Paul had suspected for many years that his mother's husband was not his biological father. According to Paul, his father was sterile, and his mother had had a long-standing affair with another man whom she had hoped to marry, but who stayed with his wife when she developed leukemia. After he pressed her several times, his mother finally broke down and confirmed Paul's suspicions. This was about a year before we met. The discovery that my father was not my real father added, of course, to Paul's feeling that he did not belong here. Paul's father, his mother's husband, has had problems of impulse control. This may be related to the fact that his mother, according to what Paul's mother has told him, would take him and his brother's clothes off and do odd things that were abusive. Sometimes he would strap Paul for anything that pissed him off. He also may have exposed himself to certain people and made advances toward my sister 3 years younger than Paul, but that's as far as it went. Nothing really developed from it. Paul's mother seems, from his accounts, like a fearful person. He had the sense that she was intimidated by his intense curiosity and intelligence. She would try to suppress me, he said, and make him doubt his own mental capacities. Naturally, this uneasiness was aggravated by Paul's abduction-related encounters. I would adjust, Paul said, because I don't want to freak anyone out. You know what I mean, especially your mother. I'll keep this under wraps. The day after he saw the being on the stairs, home, described above, Paul told his mother about the experience. She admitted that at the top of the stairs she had an experience like an incredible feeling of fear that stopped her midpoint. She was coming down the stairs and she just stopped. To Paul, this was confirmation from someone else that something was in the same exact spot. But his mother denied that she had seen anything. His mother herself once had a 2-hour period of missing time, which she acknowledged when Paul asked her, but she had not given it much thought. And I'm like, Ma, 2 hours in the middle of the day. Didn't you question that? Paul's sister has described a UFO that she and their mother saw together, but they are vague about the details. When we met for Paul's first hypnosis session, we began by reviewing his disciplined meditation program and the tensions he was experiencing during the process. He spoke of his wish to develop his psychic potentialities and of the altered state of consciousness and heightened awareness he would achieve during the meditations. He expressed the desire to know more about my past, especially to find out who were those people from the encounter at age 6.5. Before talking further about this time, Paul told me of a frightening incident that had occurred late at night or in the early morning a month before. He had been coming out of a dreaming sleep when he heard a loud bang, like there was something by the trash can out front. He looked out the window to check and seeing nothing, went back to sleep. Going in and out of sleep, he felt sure that there was something in the room. But when he felt something on top of me and found he could not move at all, he became terrified. I felt it further off, but then it came really close and like, whoa, that's too close, back off. As I'm freaking out, I'm trying to figure out where this thing is, and I was measuring it, like off the tip of my nose. I could feel it right there, about 4 or 5 inches off my nose. He wanted to open his eyes, but simply could not do it. He dozed off again, a common paradox in abduction-related terror, and then upon awakening was able to break out of it and look. But there was nothing there. Although fully conscious now, Paul found he was gagging on my own breath because I couldn't speak, and was still unable to move for a few more moments. Although he saw no beings during this incident, Paul nevertheless felt invaded by something that had definitely done something. Although we were tempted to explore this incident further, we returned to the episode from age 6.5 that occurred in the fall of 1972. As I characteristically do, I reviewed with Paul in great detail beforehand the context in which the encounter occurred so that I would already be oriented as the incident was explored during hypnosis and not have to impede his associations with too many distracting factual questions. Much of this information had emerged in Paul's meetings with Ms. T. We went over the layout of the house, the location of his room, and how his mother tucked him in bed that night. Paul does not remember falling asleep, but does recall looking at the bureau, getting up, and walking over to the sliding glass doors that separated his room from the back porch. He said that a familiar voice in his head told him to go outside, as if I was supposed to meet someone out there. As he described his behavior that night, Paul spoke as if he were the adult Paul observing the actions of the little boy from right behind his eyes. "I don't feel like he feels," Paul said, "but I understand what he feels." The boy went out on the porch, looked up, and saw a flash of a ship that seemed to pass right over his house. It was like the whole thing was lit, Paul said. It was round, like a perfect circle, big, awesome, larger in the horizontal plane than the vertical, long and smooth on the bottom. He, the boy, was deciding where the we refers to the boy Paul and the adult observing Paul as if they were together were going. So we went down the stairs of the porch and we went over to the chimney, a structure standing in the backyard, and then we sat down. The boy walked inside the chimney as if we're hanging out waiting for someone to come. Paul, is now speaking from inside himself, as the little boy really had no idea who was going to be coming, and I was terrified when I started to realize that someone was there. Paul adult notes that it had to have been brighter because inside the chimney I was able to see bricks, like charcoal bricks. I have to go with him, Paul, as child because we're linked in a way. So we go out, and that's when there were two groups coming up both sides of the house. The beings were small, about the 6-year-old's height, with one that appeared to be somewhat taller. There were about 4 or 5 of the beings in each group. They weren't human, Paul said, but nevertheless, when they started coming around, the boy felt more comfortable and was thrilled to be with them. They were touching and hugging the boy, who felt a great calmness and really like home, as did the adult Paul in the session at that moment. Pam Casey's notes describe Paul's body movements during the regression. They provide a sense of the intensity of his experience. Paul is having a lot of body reactions to this information, an involuntary tensing in resistance to each new piece, then often a nervous laugh, a deep breath, a sort of convulsion, and then a relaxing to the next piece. His face is grimacing, frowning, eyebrows furrowing, teeth clenching, then a laugh, head shaking emphatically, nervous, earnest, charged, overloaded. Further along it's getting harder, body twitching, tensing, head shaking, nodding, raising off the pillow, face contorting, expression changing every second or two, arms at his sides, but hands gripping, opening, gesticulating. At the start of the regression, I took Paul back to that night and encouraged him to be the 6.5-year-old boy rather than the adult observing him. "I get stopped," he said. "I guess it's fear. It gets more and more intense as I try to be him." As I encouraged Paul to be with the fear, Paul soon felt numbness in his face, spreading through his abdomen, chest, and hands. With his fear increasing, he saw a big eye in front of me, hands on me, and a sense that he was shrinking. "There are others there," he said, "and they won't let me feel anything." Then, feeling himself to be lying on his back naked in a room with a domed ceiling, he saw tools and a bench. His whole body numb now, Paul said, I was able to look out a window. "It's space. I just saw stars. I saw a lot of stars. It feels like it's moving." Once again, Paul had difficulty connecting his adult observing self with the little boy and his experience. "Everything keeps me from connecting together," but was able to say, "I can be me." Then he felt plates, like grids, pushing down on my stomach. At my request, he described one of the humanoid beings. He had no hair on his head, and his eyes were large and black with no apparent irises. The nose was flat, like an ape, and the mouth seemed to have scales around it, like plates on his lips. The being let him up then and led Paul through a door. I walk outside. We're looking at controls on the ship. It's a ship. It's a ship. It's a ship. The being seemed to Paul to be a friend, showed him the controls, and told him, "You're like me, on the ship." At first Paul did not understand, but the being explained further that, "You're from here." Then, as the humanoid figures watched, the being led Paul to a colander-like structure a little below, off to the side of the center of the big ship. He said to Paul, "This is where we congregate." The figure that was escorting Paul showed him a bed that was rather like a human bed with sheets, but it's floating. He told Paul, "They're your quarters. You're here. You're here when we go on these trips." In fact, the quarters felt familiar to Paul, for he estimated he had been there 70 times. Paul felt confusion and disbelief then and now, but says, "I feel like I'm there. I feel like this is the room that he's showing me that I'm in when I go to where he takes me." At this point, I asked Paul about the timing and frequency of these many visits. Paul replied, "He's saying they're all connected, that it's the same." "What's the same?" I asked. "The lives, they're all the same. It's close. It's close to my life. It's close to now. I was on the ship before I came here, i.e., to Earth." At this point, Paul was experiencing what might be described as if breaking through an information barrier, and he felt acutely the tightening and releasing of his body described in Pam Casey's notes. "It keeps breaking, and it's pretty confusing," Paul said. "It's plain to him, the being, and to me, but I can't grasp it here, i.e., in the context of the Western, rationalistic perspective that my questioning may have represented for him." At this point, the being conveyed to Paul that he would tell me anything I want to know. Our session became then an exploration of Paul's dual identity, human nature from an alien perspective, and alien-human relations over time. Paul himself was kind of like a spy, put on Earth for a purpose. He, the alien, says that your spirit is from here, Yabba-A, the ship, not Earth. He says what makes you up is here, and he says that the seeds of human beings is how we integrated you into this. But you are from here. Home, Paul said, is on that planet. They are very peaceful. Very peaceful. They're not like here. They've been killed here before. I asked Paul where that planet was. "All right. All right. All right. You're not supposed to know. I'm not supposed to know. I can know. All right, all right. All right, I can see it. It's red and but it's blue. It's different. It swirls, like Jupiter swirls. The planet is in this universe, but farther away than you've ever known." I asked how the beings get from one place to another. "It's like hopping," he said. "Energy, like folds into itself, and you're just somewhere else. Everything folds, inverts into, and folds inside itself. Like you can move one at a time, or you can move like vast numbers of people. No one's supposed to know. People aren't supposed to know this yet." I asked him to say why. Speaking now as an alien, he replied, "We've been hurt here before. Your people hurt us." Paul said, "It's in your nature to be violent," and spoke of the human need to control everything and to isolate ourselves from other beings, including the aliens themselves. Humans are just another form. You're another life form of energy. You think you're independent of life, and you can't be that way. You're causing death. You're causing a lot of death, and it's your own. And we're trying to help you, but we came and we were killed by many of you. People like himself," Paul continued, "we're here to integrate, and it's slow. Because if we came and tried to disrupt you people, it wouldn't work. It didn't work before. Before when? I asked. Pushing ahead, as if ignoring my question, Paul continued, You people are too violent already. You're too violent and you're too hostile. It's too embedded in your nature, and you have to come to grips on that. You have to understand that, and it's got to be a little bit of time. We can't come straight on. We can't come straight on. We have to integrate like with this. I tried to take Paul back to what happened in his quarters on the ship, but he deflected this effort and persisted with his struggle to understand the information that's been locked in me. It's more than we can understand. I felt I had no choice but to let him continue. He told further of the trouble the aliens have had in their encounters with human beings. There's a lot of us, i.e., dual identity beings here, he said. When we come straight on, it ends up in power. Everyone here is so wrapped up in power. He spoke of how difficult it is for your species to truly open up to another. As a human being, but identified also as an alien, he has had a great deal of trouble here. He is trying to help human beings, but has felt attacked. Any new thing coming in is attacked. I'm trying to do what I need to do to help you, but I'm under attack. Human beings think that they're it, that that's it. But there's so much else here. There's so much life, yet human beings want death. They're choosing destruction, and they keep choosing it over life, over connection, over creation. This is hell here. Everyone has tried to explain that to you. They've tried to tell you that this place needs to turn around. Human beings keep tripping over themselves. Paul spoke further in prophetic tones of human stubbornness, unwillingness to accept what we have done or to receive help. That's why people like us, coming here, get caught up in this, and then we get sick like you. The alien beings can be physical on your plane, but also be connected with others, not on your plane. That enables the aliens to accept others, and to communicate and integrate with them. Human beings, he said, can't even integrate with something of your same plane, let alone something of a different plane. You can't even accept the life around you. Segregation, isolation, and fear characterize the human attitude toward life, Paul said. Paul spoke of how difficult it is for him to exist in both human and alien identities. It's harder for us to be fragmented like this, he said. In his human self, he feels the great pressures of your human society. It's just too much. It's so stressful. It's just so stressful. He spoke then of how we have expanded a kind of protective shell into a whole separate thing. This shell is just supposed to be a minor thing. It's a minor thing, and you people hold on to it. Like you've created this new thing. It's a whole new thing. It's like a little layer. It's one little layer, and you've got that being your whole universe. It's like one layer of appearance. As he tried to answer my questions, Paul found himself bouncing or jumping back and forth between his alien and human identity or perspective, which he found difficult. The flow of his thoughts seemed to have a direction of their own, almost independent of my questions. What is the purpose of controlling something you don't even understand in the first place? What are you controlling? I don't understand. You're controlling nothing, he continued. If you look at frequency and energy and the way it's structured itself around the form, and you start going deeper, and you start to understand evolution, the way that connects itself to molecular structure, it goes on for eons and eons. It's further than you can fathom, and it's tried to tell you that too, and you don't understand it. What's it? I asked. Consciousness, he replied, higher forms of consciousness. You're not going to understand infinity, but it's there. The alien beings, Paul said, have access to this higher consciousness, which flows through you, and is an intelligence which exists or moves everywhere. Person to person, nation to nation, world to world, I asked. Universe to universe, he said. There's consciousness on every single level. It's infinite, he said. I explored further with Paul what information he had received in his abduction experiences about this higher consciousness. It starts as an energy you can't perceive, he said, but then it evolves and starts becoming intelligent. It can bow into different dimensions, engulfing shapes just like a cell engulfs another cell and takes a new shape. The energy mirrors another shape. It engulfs a new shape and networks with that. It communicates with it and understands it. It learns and it grows. It creates. That is creation in action, and it becomes more and more intelligent. It grows. It has more to choose, more choices. Paul spoke further of how matter and energy flex back or change one into the other in various ways. Relating this creative process to his perceptions of human recalcitrance, Paul said, "You don't want to change and grow. Change to you is fear. Change means destruction. You've got so many backwards viewpoints on the way it really works. You hold on, you change for a second, and then you hold on forever. You hold on forever." Curiously, Paul revealed that the alien intelligence does not really understand why human beings are so destructive and resistant to change, and I asked if the intrusive physical procedures they perform on our bodies are to learn about this. "That's a part," he said, and acknowledged that the poking and looking are for the purpose of understanding, helping, and adjusting, but added without explaining, there's mistakes that have been made. In the last analysis, we, Paul, as alien, don't understand why you are so stuck and have not learned. It poses some complex problems for us, he said. An organism that gets to be at such a degree of destruction should flip back and learn upon itself. It should understand, like you stretched it out to its maximum, and you should understand that you're going to break. We don't understand why you choose destruction. Intervention and change are possible even without understanding, Paul said. We can turn it around. But you're going to have to accept more changes that go on. The changes are going to get faster, and it's going to be harder for you to change. The intelligences are present now. It keeps opening levels. We have changed some already, he allowed, but our human nature would resist further change. He said it was hard for him to be like a spy that has been shown different levels. There's a lot of stuff around you that keeps knocking at its door, and then it stops. It's happened before. It's happened so many times. In spite of the great distance human beings have come, they still isolate themselves. That knowledge of evolution, that learning process, has grown all along with you. You have memories from the beginnings. The beginnings, if you can even fathom that. And I can't fathom that because I'm part human, and it's hard for me. At this point in the session, Paul seemed to be feeling a great sadness as we contemplated together how out of balance and lost we humans were. In a nostalgic tone, Paul spoke of how very comfortable he felt. Here on the ship. I want to go home, he said, and it's on the ship. It's home. My home is there. Quite a number of abductees say this. I reminded him of his disbelief when first shown his quarters. He said, "It's not hard for the real me to accept. I know that. It's hard for the shell Paul to accept." The planet he had spoken of earlier was the home from which he originally came, and the quarters are where I am when we're traveling, when we're exploring. Paul realizes now that he has been shown a greater time distance than he had previously understood, including past lives. Struggling with his disbelief over what he was experiencing, expressed through nervous laughter, tense body movements, and interspersed comments like, "This is bigger than I thought," And it's so weird, Paul told, how we came across this planet thousands of years ago. We've made connections here before with primitive life forms. I'm being shown dinosaurs in a way. This is old. Reptiles, oh my God, that form we were able to make contact with. The reptilian form, I asked. Yup, that was smarter than humans, he said, laughing. I asked how this had been communicated to him on the ship. I don't know, he replied. It's like a memory in a way. It's hard. This is hard because I know now that I can make contact again. With whom? I asked. Contact with my brothers on that planet, in space, in that ship. I suggested we use his language and call the aliens brothers, since to Paul the beings we call aliens he felt were indeed my people, or my brothers. At this point, images were coming to Paul faster than he could deal with them, and I encouraged him to recenter himself and take his time. He said that this reptilian form was very intelligent, a form of energy that spanned up to that point, and it did very well. I asked what happened to them. It just evolved past this time. It allowed for new forms of life, he replied. Oh man, they can tell time, they can feel time, they understand what's coming in the future. They, the creatures in reptilian form, understand. They're compassionate. They were able to have an understanding, a compassion towards the future of your existence. Paul then felt waves of energy passing through his body, pushing on his abdomen and causing his hands to feel like needles. He said this felt comfortable and integrated in a way. The material that was emerging, he noted, was not foreign and very clear. We were coming close to the end of the session, and I asked Paul how the material he had recovered today could be useful to us as human beings. His first response was that what he had recalled today was helping him to understand more of who I really am. I am a cross between, this is hard to understand for me, between what I've known as me and the brothers who are with me, what the human beings would call an alien. He could not quite grasp the word, but it came to him that these were something like the TA people. The TA people have evolved over a long time, but differently from humans, Paul said. They did not expect so many problems when they integrated with you. I asked him why they had decided to integrate with us. That's the way creation works, he said, but humans aren't ready to do this. And we are ready. We want to learn. I asked Paul why the evolving alien-human relationship was surfacing so much at the present time. He said that human evolution had reached the point where we were better able to accept the connection. The human perspective or evolution has grown to a point that it's intelligent enough to accept more, but it's on the border. It's teetering back and forth. As we talked of these matters, Paul felt intense heat energy passing through his body and concentrating in his hands. I wondered what it would take to push us over the border. Accept everything, he said. There is so much to accept. For his own growth, this meant more fully accepting his TA identity, what I am. He spoke of how hard it is to be in the middle. I'm in between. I'm more than a TA person. I'm more than a human being, he said. This is hard. More people are finding out just how in between they are themselves. It seemed as if, with each expression of opening to the elements of his complex identity and the responsibility this seemed to impose, Paul would feel additional strain in his body. It can only take so much. I am getting tired, he said. He felt flooded with intense sensations of heat and pins and needles-like tingling through my organs, especially in the stomach, chest, face, and hands, which he related to big growth jumps. My squeezing his hands intensely with my hands helped to release the heat energy blocked in his hands. As Paul came out of the regression, he said that he felt a lot better, strongly centered. We talked about the responsibility of his double identity and the energy associated with the information he was processing. Perhaps the shell we have constructed, even the destructive course, was not so formidable, he suggested. Pride, fear, this ego stuff, were dead ends that start out with sensitivity and become like a cancer, which locks everything down. The alien-human unification might create a new balance, an evolutionary step, a kind of cosmic mutation in Paul's words, the balance of creation and destruction. As we reviewed the session, Paul spoke with wonder at the storage in his consciousness of ancient memories, for example of reptilian intelligence, and the virtually unlimited perspective this could provide. But human beings have lost the incredibly intelligent power or utility of that memory bank, as he called it. For example, people just look at them like, oh, the dinosaur has a small little brain with flabby arms. It ate, slept, shaked. That's what it did. And they were killed by a meteor because it didn't have the know-how. And of course, they're going to relate it to it didn't have hands like us and stuff, so it couldn't create a home like we have. It's like, wow. That's so egotistical. You want it to be like you, so it's intelligent. You know nothing about their culture. You got some bones, you know. You don't know. You don't know anything about them. It occurs to me that this has been the way for a long time, but we know nothing about the animal kingdom. Nothing. Yet it's always around, and there's definitely communication. What about the intelligence of the energy making the form? I was out of the room for a few minutes, and the session concluded with Paul speaking with Pam of human domestication of animals into pets as an expression of our need to control everything around us because of fear, the narrow perspective of human identity, and the twisted, competitive, and intolerant culture we have evolved. Our second hypnosis session took place 6 weeks later. Before the regression began, Paul spoke of his desire to further overcome the inner impediments to his personal transformation and the fulfillment of his mission. More specifically, he felt that throughout his life he has been immersed in dysfunctional systems, beginning within a family that often responded to his need for love and support with abuse and manipulation to conform, and continuing in social and political systems that restricted his capacity to love. His dream has been to break down the barriers of fear between people and to create a network of lines of communication on the way to building new structures based on love and healing. But he fears the pressures that are directed against anyone who tries to push against familiar limits. An incredible attack from the society in general upon you because you are pushing another boundary open. He expressed concern for what would happen to me. Everyone's going to be scared shitless of what you're doing, and let alone the fact that it feels like it might be successful. Paul spoke of his need to feel confident of the emotional climate in the house before being opened further, and commented on the uneasiness about the work with abduction experiences he had sensed in my wife, which was allayed somewhat in a brief conversation that he had had with her before the session began. It became evident that questions of trust between Paul and me had developed, and, to a degree, I was being perceived through the lens of his disappointment with previous caregivers and also as an authoritative senior representative of the hierarchical social systems about which he felt so troubled. As we sorted out these concerns, trying together to separate reality-based concerns from distortions that Paul brought to the situation, he became better able to trust you enough for the session to proceed. I acknowledged that it was natural for him to need to test my trustworthiness, and he said that the testing process did not have to be hostile or a violent proving. Then truth would be lost for sure. I know you're coming from a deep place, he said, and I do feel safe in telling you what's happening. Before we started the regression, Paul spoke further about the intense struggle he had been undergoing as he confronted his own and other people's fears related to the abduction phenomenon. Pam had introduced him to several other abductees with similar difficulties, but although this was helpful, his experience that everybody keeps throwing things out left him feeling as if he were drowning. I spoke to Paul of the hero's journey of which he was embarked, and he talked further of this outrageous doubt and fear that's here. In the regression, he wanted to go in to the incredible pain he felt right in my heart, right in my chest. Referring to his drive to my house that afternoon, Paul said, "I was crying my eyes out all the way here. I was just feeling everything, just the pain of the world. When I pulled up in front, tears were just streaming down my face. I have trouble crying in front of anyone." I asked if he had been able to cry with his father. "Probably," he said, "but it would have been a cry of defeat. I'm crying out of pain, out of power, coming here," he said. My last question concerned what he wanted to go back toward. He wanted to access that pain, for sure, he said. It's going to blow out of my chest, and I'm in my own way right now. More than I have ever felt before. Paul's first image in the hypnosis was from a recent abduction experience. A hooded figure on a ship took his hand and walked him through a door and down a hall to a dark room. In the room, a light was on, and he was strapped into a chair. The figure had a big pointer and showed Paul on a screen getting hit by someone in his family. Then, he's showing me the world, and all these people are dying. He's telling me that I'm going to fix it. The figure said, "I already know how, and it's in all of us, and that's how it will just spread right across." The scene changed, and Paul went back to when he was a boy. He was about 12 years old in the cellar of his home when this episode began. I'm fighting alone. The thing that's fighting me knows that I'm right here, but I'm protected in some way, I guess. 'Cause it can't just come out and just kill me. I think it wants to, though, definitely, he thought, as it seemed to lunge toward him, only to be stopped by some sort of protective barrier. But it can't do that. It has to do it in other ways. It's going to try. It's going to take me apart, little piece by little piece. We've done this battle before. That's why I'm still here. He says he fights with everyone like this. The battle seemed mythic to Paul, as if he were confronting destruction that wants creation stopped. Some people call it Satan, he said. I'm yelling, he said, but I don't think anyone's around. In the darkness, Paul perceived a glowing, non-human creature staring at him that he called symbolistic. It controls humans to a great degree and wanted to destroy him, but he was protected from getting lost by a creational force that held him. Once again, he experienced numbness spreading through his whole body and helplessness. But the creature could not kill him because I know too much about who I am and where all my strength comes from. It cannot cut me off. Death would come through isolation, but Paul was connected through my back by cords that the creature was trying to cut. Recognizing that he was speaking symbolically, Paul said that the cords, which were connecting me to parts of myself, were cut by the creature. Experiencing great distress in his body as he related this, Paul said, "It's too painful. It's too painful to be here. It hurts." No longer at home in his cellar, Paul now was lying on his back in his bed at night and experienced things moving around me. He could not move at all and saw a thing in the closet with a horror face, like that character from The Exorcist. That frightened him intensely as a child. The figure seemed to turn a light on, but receded further into the darkness of the closet. Paul wanted to go after it alone. Surrounded by darkness now, he could still see the figure huddled in a corner. I can feel it breathing over there, It's dangerous in a way, but I think it's just been beaten so badly." He chose to reach his hand toward the creature. A shift of consciousness occurred, and Paul was once more back in his room. Yaha! Yuck! Okay, it's so broken. It looks broken. Its arms don't move the right way. They don't move like my arms do. It's slimy. It doesn't feel like me. I can't understand it. It wants me to understand it. The creature tried to communicate with Paul and to touch him, which is freaking me out. It is telling me about myself. It's trying to tell me something about me. The figure told Paul that it's me and that he, Paul, has the power to make this thing, and I can't see how I do. I can't see that I do. Once again, Paul's body became numb, and he was with the creature in the woods, and they were talking. The figure seemed then to become smaller, 4 feet or so, and looked kind of like me. It's got eyes and nose kinda, except flatter. There's not much to it, and ears that are just like holes in its head. Oh, this is weird looking. The head was large in proportion to the thin body. The figure reached out to Paul with a hand that had 2 or 3 fingers and a thumb, and it just wants to talk to me. It doesn't understand why I'm freaking out. "Why are you freaking out?" I asked. I'm afraid. It looks really weird. It's just different than me." The being keeps touching me, and Paul could not understand why. It wants me to understand what it has to say. It wants me to understand how to be me. It's trying to help me to be me. Paul now believed he was about 9 when this experience occurred. Still in the woods, he saw a ship behind the creature. It keeps tilting its head, but I can't talk to it. I don't know what to say to it. The figure held its hands out to Paul, and it wants me to take its hands. But he was too afraid and could not open to it like it wants me to. It's just so different. The figure pulled Paul by the hands into the ship. "Oh my God," Paul said, and he felt himself pass literally through the door of the ship. It's liquidy in a way, but it's still there. Inside the ship it was dark at first. He was in a sitting position as several beings searched his body with their hands, as if they're confused about something. Although he felt as if he gave permission to the beings to touch him, he resisted communication with them, which they did not understand. The beings wanted Paul to lie down on a table, which he did. He had no clothes on, could not move, and felt cold. "I don't understand," Paul said, and felt terrified and confused. "They're cutting me open." Using what appeared to be some kind of light, the beings made a 7 or 8-inch long cut in his right leg above the knee. The loose flesh opened about a 1/2 inch, exposing muscle, ligaments and bone, but creating little bleeding. It should be bleeding. Why isn't it bleeding? The procedure did not hurt, but the sight of his leg opened up was terrifying to Paul. "They're just looking into it," he said. "Then they're taking a little piece of my bone. Using just the light, the beings closed up the wound, and now we're going to talk." Left alone with his panic, Paul found he had difficulty breathing, which he experienced in our session. He felt that the beings tried, but could not understand why he was so intensely frightened. The beings explained to Paul that there is some relationship between us, and that I'm from them. At this point in the session, Paul experienced a kind of split in his awareness. In his alien identity, he understood that they were trying to help him, but as a human being, I'm having trouble understanding who I am and explaining to other people. The operation on his leg and lots of other things before and since have been done to him by the beings to change things inside me so that he can become like a liaison who can introduce them to me and other human beings. But he was afraid for his new friends, afraid that they are going to get hurt because everyone's too afraid of them. The aliens, Paul said, have taught him many things, like how I think and how energy works in me. I asked him to explain. It's a very powerful thing. Your thought has great impact on where that energy is going to go, and they're teaching me how to be aware of where I want that energy to go. They show me how to use it. They show me how to feel it in my body. They show me how to feel it in other people and in other bodies. They're showing me their technology. Like what? I asked. The way they heal themselves when they get cut or hurt, Paul said. Paul, like many abductees, seems to have been psychically skilled all his life and appears to grow more so as he recovers material about his alien encounters. What is unusual about him is his ability to communicate his skills to others in a simple manner. Pam Casey has seen him use metaphors from common experience to enable people to move awareness from one place to another in their bodies or open to the solution of a problem. By asking a few simple questions, he can also help people become aware of a level on which they are already receiving information that they had until then been ignoring. His teaching ability, as Pam and others have observed, is extraordinary. Paul explained then that when they are exploring, sometimes certain ones die, but they can be collected again and brought back, to life, by the energy of the other beings. They make it the dead one absorb, like the energy that is the consciousness of one or more of the other beings, because the one that died wasn't supposed to die then. He then gave as an example when the ship crashed in a desert after they were shot at by us, and there's a couple of them dead. At this point in the session, Paul was puzzled to experience himself as actually being at the crash site. I'm just here with them. I feel like I'm their friend. I know who shot them. Why? Why did we shoot them? Why did they shoot them? This isn't right. Men in uniforms, they're showing me who shot them. I don't belong with that group. It's the military, it's soldiers. They shot them. They, the beings, have been hurt. I can't help them. Then what happened? All the jeeps are coming. We're taking off. We have to go. We're going to leave the rest. I asked if he was one of them or in human form, and Paul replied, I'm human. We have to leave the crash site, he continued. The army's coming, and they're going to take everything. They're taking the ship. They're going to take the ship. But he saw that his alien brothers were hurt by the fear of those men. They, the aliens, have to show me this stuff, he said. I don't like to see it. Why? I asked. I don't want to be human. I don't want to be human. I'm sorry for being human. I didn't mean to hurt them. Paul explained that he was also 9 when he was at the crash site, in another ship that went to rescue the dead ones. Paul felt anguished that several of his dead friends could not be collected and had to be left behind in the desert. He had wanted to help them and felt sad that they suffered all because of the fear of those other people, the ignorance of those human beings. His life, Paul said, is devoted to bringing the awareness up, but in order to achieve that, I have to love me and let myself be here. In the session, Paul felt his heart opening up more. It feels warm, he said. Things are melting. And he had the feeling of peace and love spreading. The planet Earth is going to grow, Paul said, by caring for ourselves, but it starts with me. I have to accept what I've learned, especially that healing begins in the heart and then it flows out. The alien beings, he said, had shown him that hatred of others had caused sickness of the heart and that the force to grow was all around me. They, the aliens, showed me to use that knowledge. His own role, Paul said, was to function as a bridge between the aliens and the human world. They want me to form a group that can meet with them. They need us not to be so afraid of them, to be open, to understand, to enter into an exchange of love. It is necessary for him and other humans to confront their fear if we are to change this place we live in, that I live in. There is much to be done, Paul added, and I need help to do this, and I need your help. As the session was coming near the end, Paul spoke further of his own need to grow and expressed his love for me and Pam. I can trust you two to help me. Why do we find it so hard to love each other? We spoke then of the connection between a personal history of hurt, as in his life, or even in the experience of the aliens themselves, and the unwillingness or inability to open the heart. Before concluding, we talked further of what appeared to be Paul's consciousness of an incident like what reportedly occurred at Roswell, New Mexico, where a space vehicle seems to have crashed a few days after the first flying saucer sightings of our current era. The aliens, Paul said, did not expect the hostile reception they received. I felt they came with open arms and they got a spear right through them. They got blasted, it seems, and that really confused everything. They completely don't understand us. They start to now. But this initial reception made the relationship really difficult. I wondered about consciousness as a kind of continuous fabric that allows you to go anywhere under certain conditions. Paul's response was complex. He agreed with what I said, but added, at the same time, you get, like it flexes in. Your energy, you could, when you die, you'll like retract a little bit to that core consciousness, and the memories of who you are, still very much here and very much incorporated into that energy. Very much so. And it goes back into the whole, and the whole grows back again, and then you come back. The memories are there, but it's kind of like you push back out again, and you take form again. You seem like you feel that independence because you're so focused into one direction, into one purpose, like coming back molecularly and drawing from everything, drawing from all because of what you're connected to. The lines that you have to where you're really from are ominous power. It's enormous. But since you're pushing forward, you forget what's behind you. That's what I think held me. I think those are those chords, in a way, that I'm feeling behind me, maybe. I'm not sure. I asked Paul what form he was in during this episode. Was he embodied as a 9-year-old, or was it only a kind of consciousness? He said that he felt very much like I was completely me, and then everything changed around me to show me an example of what has happened, to help me understand it. Right? And so I'm very much aware of who I am, but everything kept changing so radically that the information is so spontaneous. Paul had felt as if his body was literally on the ship during this event. It felt like I was there. It felt very real. Reviewing other aspects of the session, Paul observed that slimy, broken thing was his own externalized fear of the unknown. The image in our session was like a feared image from the film The Exorcist that had terrified him for weeks as a child. When I met them, the aliens, and I touched them, and it's like, oh, you're slimy, and then cold and all this stuff, and that frightened me more. The aliens seemed to resist, even object, to the confusion of identity or false attribution that occurred here. For example, when they were taking Paul through the woods to the ship, he experienced the communication from them that they had reached out and wondered, what's wrong? Come on. I am who I am and you are who you are, and what is the problem with you? And they're trying to get their thoughts in. They don't want to take you over. He felt they were looking at him as if to say, why aren't you communicating with me? How come you can't accept what you are? I spoke with Paul of the difficulty human beings have in accepting and acknowledging the source of power from which we may come. He responded that accepting another human being as a source of information is hard enough. But now to accept, non-humans as a source of information for you, as a guru, as a teacher, it's amazing what they have taught me now that I'm accepting it more and more. They may have shown me where the creational force is. They're the ones that assist in linking me up to it in a big way. Paul reflected on his experience of being completely doubtful about the reality of his alien encounters, which he related to the limited definition of God he had experienced in his upbringing as his parents went from religion to religion. Yet Paul grew up feeling that he understood the connection to a source. The terminology and stuff in between is immaterial. He reflected with awe upon the unbelievable technology he had learned from his alien encounters, especially the flood of information he has received about how they heal. "I've got notebooks full of this stuff," Paul said, "and it's very solid." A few days later, another abductee, Julia, a young woman with whom I have been working for nearly 3 years, called me and spoke about Paul, whom she had met for the first time in our support group. Although they had not known each other on Earth, she felt that she knew him very well from meetings in the ships. It is very common for abductees to report that they have seen or been with other abductees who they know on the ships. She spoke of Paul's overpowering personality, which exudes love. He is rock solid, she said, and very centered. In the environment of the ship, Paul has a presence and a power similar in quality to my doctor, i.e., the principal alien figure in her abductions, or to that of any of the alien beings. In particular, Julia said, Paul has great gifts as a healer and teaches people like herself to pull despair and hurt from people. He does seem to her and others to have a great ability to carry the pain of people's suffering and to purge them of it, especially with the use of his hands. Julia had never talked individually with Paul, and of course knew none of the details of our sessions. Discussion Paul's case is illustrative of an increasing number of abductees who are not focused so much on the traumatic nature of their experiences, but instead are seeking to communicate information that they feel they have received during their experienced encounters with the alien beings. Our 2 relaxation sessions included traumatic material, especially the shock of helplessness and the lacerating procedure done to his leg. But these are of less interest to Paul than accessing the knowledge he has received during his abduction experiences. This information is concerned with such matters as human fear and destructiveness, our resistance to change, the necessity of heart opening, and the transformative power of love, space transporting, healing technologies. He says he has learned from the aliens the nature of consciousness, especially as the primal source of creation, and Paul's dual human-alien identity and role as a healer and a bridge between the 2 worlds. A central theme in Paul's material is the extreme and unrelenting quality of human destructiveness, which, although based on fear, remains bewildering to the aliens themselves. It appears to the aliens, he says, as if we have deliberately chosen death over life, and their experiments are in part an effort to understand our perverse, stubborn ways, as well as a kind of intervention to move us along the path from destruction toward creation. It is difficult to know how to evaluate the information that Paul has received. In the first place, as he himself says, it is hard to accept the power and knowledge of, let alone experience as gurus. Creatures such as these who are so odd in appearance and shatter our notions of reality. For Paul, like all of us who are exposed directly or indirectly to this phenomenon, the first task has been to accept the fact of his own experience. Furthermore, the accounts that he provides sometimes altogether defy space-time reality. Such space-time traveling might make sense by conceiving of consciousness as a kind of hologram of universal sourcefulness, which can create matter and form itself, and to which Paul, and each of us potentially, has access if we can open and let go, as called for, into this primal, universal information or energy fabric. Much of the material of Paul's sessions was concerned with the form and identity-creating power of consciousness, and the compelling necessity of opening ourselves to its infinite qualities. What made Paul's communication so compelling and persuasive was the intensity of feeling and bodily movement and sensation that accompanied each new thought. In working with him, it was as if the hypnotist's role was to facilitate Paul's access to knowledge that was stored within him and that powerfully affected his body as it moved into consciousness and could then be communicated. The idea of consciousness as an infinite source of energy and form to which each being has access makes it perhaps inappropriate to consider each communication of Paul's in terms of whether it is literally factual or concretely happened in linear space-time terms. I appreciate that this will not satisfy anyone who would still hold to a view of reality that is limited to the physical four-dimensional universe. On the other hand, there may be some value in challenging our restricted epistemology and expanding our criteria for evaluating information to include the power or intensity with which something is felt and communicated, and the potential utility the knowledge may have in relation to our contemporary dilemmas. Applying these criteria, there is little doubt that Paul experienced the information that came to him in our sessions as having great power, as did those of us, Pam and myself, who received it. Furthermore, the relentless messages of the need for change, of the necessity of human mind and heart opening, and of the catastrophic consequences of our having mistaken the shell of our defensiveness for the whole of human identity, messages which comprise the essence of the information that Paul has received and imparted, are all communications of great practical value in the context of the present global crisis. Finally, there is the question of Paul himself and my role in his development and personal opening. Those who know him outside of the therapeutic setting, such as Pam, Julia, and other abductees, all testify to his extraordinary intuitive and healing abilities. He has come to me to enable him to free his powers from the restrictions of the suppression, a word he used both in relation to his mother's uneasiness in the face of his intelligence and abilities, and his former therapist's inability to deal with the abduction-related material. That was the result of several sets of forces. These include the repression of the material locked within him, an adaptive response when one considers their intensity, Paul's need to function normally in everyday reality, and the absence of a supportive context in which it could be safe to open himself to such unusual information, the ontologically shattering nature of the information itself, and the sheer power of the energies involved, which required the creation of a strongly supportive and trusting context before Paul could allow himself to bring forth what was held within. Paul experiences himself as a bridge between two worlds. He feels deeply that he has both a human and an alien identity. The task of integrating these two basic dimensions of himself, a challenge that many abductees who experience this double life must face, is formidable and is a central aspect of our work. For Paul, like other abductees who feel that they have accessed the source of creative energy in the cosmos, their human identity and participation is intensely painful, especially in the face of the destructive institutions or life systems we have created. Home for him, as it is for many abductees, is on the ship or with them. Yet at the same time, Paul feels strongly that he has been given or chosen a role on Earth to contribute, as an example in his own being of openness and love, to the evolution and transformation of human consciousness.